FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome back to the Financial Survival Network. We hope you all had a wonderful July 4th weekend. No, John and I did, and we're picking up where we left off. John, how are you? Do you have a good 4th?
I did, Kerry. How about you?
Yeah, it was nice, punctuated by torrential rains here in South Florida, punctuated by my bronchitis, but I'm going to Vegas tomorrow, so nothing's standing in my way.
All right, let the heat bake that bronchitis out of you.
We will try. So you had interesting article here. Actually, it's part 2. I think I caught part 1, which is debt makes you dumb. I mean, I thought reading the mainstream media and watching elected politicians on TV made you dumb, but evidently debt is another thing that makes you dumb.
Well, debt. Too much debt leads you to do stupid, crazy things, basically. You get yourself in a situation where your options are so limited that even things you would never have done in normal times become the lesser of two evils. And so you begin behaving incredibly stupidly. All the world's governments are doing that now. They're adopting policies that a decade ago they would have said, no way will we ever get to that point. 0 interest rates, or buying back all the bonds that we can get our hands on, or bailing out banks by taking away depositors' money, things like that. These are extreme policies that are signs of desperation. And but in this case, individuals are starting to behave that way now. Consumer debt, after falling for a few years after the 2008-2009 crisis, started to go back up again. People are starting to pull out their plastic and buy things with credit cards. But this time it's with a twist. They're using plastic to cover day-to-day expenses. They're putting food and gasoline and things like that on their credit cards. And the reason for that is that they've already taken on so much student loan debt and housing debt and car loans. Car loans are kind of the epicenter of it now. They've taken over for student loans, where junk car loans are becoming the new hot piece of paper out there in the financial system. And the average length of a car loan is going up and up and up. Now it's something like 6 years average, and some loans are at 7 years now, 84 months. And that's basically a mortgage on your car. You're going to be paying until the car is worth $4,000 or $5,000. At which point you either you've got a really old car that may not run well for you anymore, and then you have to buy a new one with another car mortgage, or you've basically got to accept the fact that you're driving something that is beneath you, or beneath your upper middle class status that you used to think was your birthright as an American. And so the car companies and the banks may not understand what they're getting into with these really long car loans, because that basically takes future sales and moves it to the present. Somebody who takes out a 7-year car loan is not going to be buying a new car anytime soon. And so that means the car companies who are making these pretty good sales this year are looking at declining sales going forward, because they're cannibalizing their future sales in the present. Same thing with the banks who are making these loans. They're very profitable loans, but there aren't going to be as many people wanting to take them out next year as this year, because so many people are taking them out now and they're locked in for 6, 7, 8 years. And that's emblematic of what's happening across the economy. We're borrowing now at every level of society. Corporations are borrowing record amounts of money this year in order to buy back their stock, which is a strategy with also a finite lifespan. You can only borrow so much, and you can only buy back so much stock. And
they'll have one share outstanding, right?
Yeah. And you'll have, billions, tens of billions of dollars of debt and hardly any shares outstanding. So what happens at that point? Well, you've got to raise capital. And maybe you have to do that by selling stock, which puts downward pressure on stock prices, commensurate with the upward pressure that your past buybacks put on stock prices. So all of these things have finite lifespans, and all of these things are basically buying trouble in the future. And it's happening everywhere across the board. The governments, obviously, we don't have to talk about how much money the governments of the U.S. and Japan and Europe are taking on. And now we've got corporations doing it, and now we've got individuals doing it once again. So the policy of every major government seems to be to try to convince whoever is susceptible to convincing at any given point in time to borrow money. And they don't care about the terms, that students are graduating from college with $30,000 in debt and no good job prospects. That's less important than the fact that the kids borrowed the money in the first place, apparently. Same thing with cars. Governments don't care that people are going to be locked into a depreciating asset and paying interest on it for, as far as the eye can see. And that's the society that we've created. And none of this would have made any sense or seemed wise to people 20 years ago. But now it just seems like standard operating procedure. It seems like normal life because we're so deeply in debt that it's our only choice. Somebody who pulls out the credit card to buy their groceries, they may not like doing it, but they don't have any options that they can see. Same thing with a car loan. If you have to take on a high interest rate car loan to get a new car, but you desperately need a new car, well, you just do it. So basically it's happening at every level now. And the next stage of the process is either going to be an even more dramatic increase in debt at every level to keep things going because, past debt is like a headwind. It slows you down because you've got to make interest payments with money that you would have used to spend on productive assets and pleasure-seeking activity. And so we'll have to borrow even more. We'll have another ratcheting up of debt levels across the board, or the market will impose some discipline on us. And it'll be harder and harder for whatever reason to borrow money. And at that point, it's not clear how we generate any kind of growth going forward. So we dip into a recession that we can't get out of, and it becomes a depression. Or we have to do a monetary reset where we say, well, okay, these dollars that you had, now they're only worth 1/3 what you thought they were worth. And so now we're back on a gold standard at $10,000 an ounce. That's a good thing going forward, but that means everybody who is trying to save money in dollars now gets a massive, massive haircut. They lose a lot of the capital that they thought they were accumulating. So there's no good options now, Kerry. Whatever we have to do next is going to be painful and bizarre and highly unpleasant for almost everybody involved.
Uncharted waters. And John, as you were speaking, it just made me understand something, that the Cashless Society fits into this new paradigm perfectly. Because, of course, there's no room for cash because nobody has any cash. Everybody is just adding to debt with every transaction, except for the top 1% to 3% of the population that actually has savings and has assets and has a positive net worth. Everybody else, every transaction that you take, the old song by the Police, every step you take, I'll be watching you, but every step you take, every move you make, you're just ringing up more debt. That's what it comes down to. And as long as the credit card has an infinite credit limit, like that South Park episode where everybody's credit card's maxed out, but Stanley gets a new credit card from American Express and it has an infinite credit limit, and he uses his credit card to replenish the whole town's credit cards, and then he gets the economy going again. And that's what we're living in. We're living in life with South Park.
Yeah, that's basically the level of economic theory that we're operating under now. And it's hard to convince somebody who's paying cash for everything to borrow money because it's just technically a stretch for them. And so governments would love it if they could get rid of the whole concept of cash, and their rationale is that, well, that's how criminal activity takes place, because it's untraceable. Well, that's also how individual freedom happens because it's untraceable. If everything is done with plastic and electronic transfers, and it's all traceable, and it all becomes part of one big database that forms your profile in the NSA supercomputers, then they're watching you every minute of every day. Everything you do shows up there, and they know where you are and what you're buying and who you're buying it for. And if you're a arms dealer or something like that, or a drug dealer, that's one thing. It's okay for the police to want to be able to track your activity, but most of us aren't drug dealers or any other kind of criminal. We're just individuals who would like to have a little bit of privacy in our lives in general, in our financial lives in particular. Yeah. And that governments are adopting policies now that make it harder and harder to use cash. You hear stuff now about leaders and their consultants actively discussing the possibility of going to a cashless society. And
we're almost there. 7%, I think, 10%.
Yeah, the vast majority of transactions now take place electronically. Sure. And that's convenient, but it comes at a cost, which is a dramatic loss of personal freedom and privacy. So these are all questions that we have to wrestle with just for technological reasons, really. I mean, it was going to happen regardless, but there are a lot of other things going on now, with governments being this indebted and this worried about civil unrest when the financial system spins out of control, that also make the cashless society idea a really hot button issue. It's important that we think about how our financial lives tie into the national security state and how Big Brother really needs, for Big Brother to be born and to actually become a reality in our lives rather than this potential thing that we've got going now. We've got the turnkey totalitarian state, as the term goes, where we set up the pieces. We have the capability for total surveillance. We have the capability for financial controls. Capital controls can be imposed very easily now. They're watching us. They know what we're doing. They can stop us from moving money back and forth across borders. That's all possible now. And so let somebody flip the switch, and then it becomes a reality. Mm-hmm. So cash is one piece of the puzzle, one thing that is making it harder for Big Brother to be born. It's something that they have to think about before they flip the switch. And so I think that this also plays into the whole buy precious metals and keep them stored in a safe place that you can get to meme, where that forms really part of your cash. And it's something that at the moment is somewhat untraceable and hard to keep track of for governments. And therefore, they can't just they can't impose capital controls very easily if a lot of people have real money on their persons or hidden in a safe place. And so, we should start taking steps as individuals to give ourselves as much flexibility as possible. And, cash money and gold and silver, these things play a role in us trying to protect ourselves from the worst case scenario of the system spinning out of control financially, leading the governments of the world to become more authoritarian and using the technology that's now available to really impose the kinds of restrictions on us that most people can't even conceive of right now. So it's a scary future, but it's one where we at least now have steps we can take to protect ourselves and our families.
Great point. And hey, let's talk about these employment numbers and the IMF predictions or guesstimates when we return on the Financial Survival Network.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
When your accountant wants tax-free income, this is what he does. Accountants know the law. They also know that any American could legally get paid up to 3 times per month, 100% tax-free. That's 36 tax-free checks each year. It doesn't matter what you make already. This simple strategy could work for anyone. Go to www.irsrevenge2.com to learn how. That's irsrevenge2.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
We're back. We're talking with John Rubino of dollarcollapse.com, author of The Money Bubble, about, John, these employment numbers that just came out. Happy days are here again. The unemployment is down to 6.1%. We got 288,000 new jobs. Why aren't we out there celebrating in the streets? Champagne on for everyone, because the numbers are just so great, right?
Well, that's the sense you'd get from the mainstream media with this report. 6.1% is actually pretty good. We haven't seen that level of unemployment for a really long time. And so it would be cause for celebration if you just looked at that number and didn't go one step below. You don't even have to dig very deeply into the report to find out that 6.1% is really bogus. Because what happened was in the last month is that we lost 500,000 full-time jobs. They just disappeared. And we gained 800,000 part-time jobs. So we picked up a net 300,000 jobs, but they weren't the same jobs.
Yeah.
You can't compare part-time and full-time jobs as if they're the same thing. So what's happening now is that a lot of companies, in part because of the healthcare law, and in part because they're still nervous after the near-death experience of 2009, they don't want to take on the commitment of full-time employees. So they're they're finding it a lot less stressful and a lot more flexible to hire people part-time. And so where you once had a good job that was a full-time job that allowed you to support your family, now you're juggling 2 crappy part-time jobs. Maybe you're a waiter in a restaurant for one, and you're part-time at a company where you don't get any benefits for the other. And you put those 2 things together and you're working 50 hours a week, but you're not making nearly as much as you made with your old good full-time job. And that's the reality for a huge and growing number of people. So the fact that jobs are going up is only a good thing if they're real jobs, if they're not part-time jobs that can just disappear at a moment's notice and don't pay you any benefits or really much money in any event. And so we're really becoming a society of office temps and fast food workers, and we're losing the engineering and the symbol manipulation jobs that used to typify a first world country, an advanced economy. So one step down, in these numbers, and the reality is a lot darker. And you never see this in the mainstream media. They just take the government's headline number and run with it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what's behind the numbers? I mean, it's basically trying to make make this thing look good, right? Put lipstick on a pig, right?
Yeah. And so from the government's point of view, the validity of the unemployment number has changed to such an extent that just reporting it without a lot of, a very highlighted explanation is tantamount to lying, because that number really doesn't mean anything anymore. And for the media who report the number, the headline number should be 500,000 full-time jobs lost in the last month. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, that's the big
that's the truth, right?
Yeah.
That is the truth.
Yeah. But you don't see that anywhere. And so, I have a series, They're Lying to Us, parts 1, 2, and 3 on
I've read it.
$collapse.com.
I've read it and reported. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I bet I can get 15 entries out of that theme. They're lying to us in a lot of different ways. And
the headline would be, they're telling us the truth. That would be a shock, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Government reports honest numbers and the mainstream media correctly interprets them. That would be a story. That
would be the shocker.
Yeah. So it's and see, you take the ability to produce and disseminate numbers that are deceptive, and then combine that with the printing press that allows you to manipulate markets to make interest rates and the stock market and the bond market all seem a lot more favorable than they actually are. And you have a really powerful system for convincing people that the world is one way when it's actually another way. Mm-hmm. And so it gradually people are starting to figure this out, but most people not. When you see the stock market going up, that's the main barometer for health to most people. They figure, these finance guys know what they're talking about, and they're the experts on the economy. And if they're willing to buy stocks, they think things are going to get better, then things must be getting better. And so a soaring stock market is almost all you need from the government's point of view to calm everyone down and make everyone think that things are basically okay, and that maybe it's time to take that nice vacation or buy that new car and finally buy a new house, And so the idea is that rising asset prices will one way or another make people feel richer and then cause them to spend money, which gets the economy moving organically, and what really happens is that people take on more debt if they're fooled into thinking that things are okay. And if things aren't actually okay, then that debt is really malinvestment. It's something that isn't going to pay back enough over time to cover the interest costs, and you just dig yourself deeper into a hole. And that's really what we're doing right now. And there really isn't any way out of it, because debt is rising faster than GDP. Mm-hmm. And if your debt is going up faster than your national wealth, then you're actually regressing. You're actually creating the conditions
you're getting poorer.
Yeah. By any rational measure. And the getting poor part actually happens pretty suddenly. Like the old quote from Ernest Hemingway about one of his friends going broke. Well, he went broke slowly at first, and then very quickly. Then all of a sudden he was broke, and that's the way it works for markets that create imbalances by taking on too much debt and not investing the proceeds wisely enough. You build up this huge imbalance that has to be worked out one way or another, and usually it's through a very sharp, very dramatic market correction. We have a 30% drop in the stock market, or bond prices go down because interest rates go up, and you have a lot of bankruptcies and a lot of debt defaults, and in other words, the standard recession. Except that the debts that we've taken on now are so huge that it really precludes a standard garden variety recession where you have a couple of slow years and then you pick back up again, because the amount of debt that we have to get rid of is unprecedented.
Well,
we've never had. Arguably, we have to get rid of $30 or $40 trillion of debt.
We got 60 trillion as a society. If you go look at